The Mitsubishi Motors Badminton Horse Trials 2000 saw 92 starters from 15 nations set out on this 4-day marathon. Welcome to our comprehensive highlights. Badminton 2000 was within a whisker of being called off as the record April rains lashed the British Isles. Happily though, warm spring sunshine prevailed just in time for the famous 4-star event to ultimately enjoy near perfect conditions. The field was understandably lacking one or two of the well-known international partnerships, with selectors anxious not to ask too many questions of their top horses prior to the Sydney Olympics. However, one leading rider who had decided to compete at badminton as part of his preparation for Sydney was Australia's Andrew Hoy with Darien Powers.
With all horses it's different, and you have to really judge it on where the horse is at with his training program. A horse like Darien Powers, who can run and jump so easily and do a 4-star competition very easily, badminton this year is a vital part for my preparation for Sydney. Sydney's not until September, but I really think with Darien Powers it's just fantastic to be able to come here and run around this course, and it's going to give me a very good indication of where I actually stand in the world and the things that I have to really look at improving before Sydney comes around.
Last year, a modified scoring method was introduced, but following almost wholesale condemnation of the changes, the decision to revert back to the original system was taken. Badminton director Hugh Thomas now explains why the FEI decided on this about-turn.
Well, it was tried for a year, the new scoring system, and the general feeling, I think, was that it wasn't quite right and could be better. But rather than tinker with it, the International Federation, quite rightly I think, decided to go back to the tried and tested system with all its flaws and do a lot more research on a new one before trying again. I hope they do try again, I must say, because I think the one we're using, that I know has been in force for years and years, is pretty incomprehensible to everybody who doesn't know the sport intimately.
Competition got underway on the Thursday morning in very bleak conditions, albeit dry. The early performances were steady rather than spectacular, and the competition didn't really come to life until first-timer Tristram Owers and Mrs. Gallagher's 10-year-old bay gelding Hatherden's River Dance posted the first score in the 30s. Well, with me to guide you through all the action is BBC commentator and former badminton runner-up Mike Tucker. And Mike, it was good to see so many first-timers at badminton. There were 36 in all, doing so well.
36, actually a new record, and particularly significant perhaps with so many of the veterans and famous names threatening to retire after the Olympics in September. Well, the test used this year is the 1975 test. The significance of that being it is the individual dressage test for the Sydney Olympics. A choice that hasn't been too popular with the riders. They haven't done this test for, in fact, since 1996 for the last Olympics, and does ask very different questions to the one used more commonly these days. 21-year-old Tristram Owers from the North Hereford Pony Club, and a boy who really did catch the eye. Trained by Nigel Tabor. In fact, he took this horse over from Nigel and really provided a well-balanced, very rhythmical, and also a test that was very accurate. You see extremely good changes of pace. No nerves from this young man. And it was a test that he will remember for a long time. Certainly the best he's ever done in what was his biggest challenge so far in his short career.
So with a score of 37.8, Tristram Owers was the unexpected overnight leader. Friday brought much warmer weather conditions and a great sense of anticipation in the morning as the crowd looked forward to the dressage test of the mighty Darien Pars. Andrew Hoy now talks us through the entire test.
Darien Powers, I have to say, today was just feeling at his best, and like coming in there into the arena, he was just felt wonderful. I didn't believe it was such a square halt actually, so that's quite good. Yeah, like I was really pleased with the way that he just moved off there. He couldn't have done it any better. This medium trot circle actually looks better than it felt to me. I was, just when I was going around, I was thinking I needed to have a little bit more, but to my eye, it looks better than it felt. So that's always a bonus. Over the last 12 months, I've spent a lot of time working on Darien Powers' dressage. Like, he has the ability, but it's been quite difficult getting him to concentrate. But today, he really had his mind on the job much better. The half pass that I'm doing at the moment, like, I was really pleased with that. And then when I came around the corner, I missed my line a little bit, and he just caught his hind leg just on the fence line, and then that got me not quite into the halt correctly, and therefore my rein back wasn't as ideal as I would have liked it to have been. He was just a little tight for my liking, and I'm sure the judges saw that as well. But again, this medium trot, I was thinking at the time that I needed to ask for a little more, but I decided to just sit and wait with what I had. As it turned out, it looked enough. His half pass to the right was maybe the half pass that he found a little more difficult, and I found a little more difficult to ride. But I was pleased with the way that half pass was, and then his hold here was very good and very square. With my medium trots, the extended trots that I'm doing at the moment, I hate to say it, but I think I produced some nicer ones outside of the arena than I did actually in the arena. He just had very good rhythm outside. It doesn't matter what you do outside, it's what you produce in the arena. I was pleased with this walk. As he was really stepping through from behind, and he was quite settled in his walk and very even in the walk. So I was really happy with this. Although he wanted to have a little look around, he didn't look around like he can look around at times. So it was fantastic that he was as settled as he was today. The person that's been helping me so much with the dressage is Klaus Bartenhol, who is the German national dressage trainer, and also my fiancée, Bettina Overesch, who is German 3-day event rider. Canter work, I was happy with this canter. It was good. He was fairly good through his back. He just came against me a little there, just as I said he was good through his back. extended canter, he was good. He didn't go against my hand, and he was good in the downward transition at K as well. He just got a little excited there and was about to run off in this 10-meter circle, but I was able to contain it. So, and there, like, he's got good rhythm to his canter there. And again, he was quite settled in this extended canter, and I was really able to go for it, which was good. And then up the center line, like he stayed straight in the canter strike off, and like from the judges sitting in front of me, it was very good. And then I was able to just allow it to him, and he was able to prick his ears and look forward on the way there.
This horse's dressage test, Mike, has improved out of all recognition.
Yes, I think particularly since Andrew and Bettina Overesh, who of course is now Andrew's fiancée, have been working together. Bettina, who is meticulous in her dressage training, and that I think has been very much evident in Andrew's enormous advance in this phase.
So could anyone beat that outstanding score of 30.8? France's Rodolphe Scherer was widely expected to produce a polished dressage performance on the Selle Francais 11-year-old Bambi de Brière. And Mike Rodolphe is now basing himself in England.
One of the few Frenchmen so to do, but the tremendous benefit that Rodolphe sees is the enormous opportunities he has of competition with the world's best riders, and that sharpens you up no end. We can see that particularly in the dressage test that Rodolphe is doing. Lovely medium trot, very even strides, keeping the same outline all of the way, and of course on a circle, and that's more difficult to maintain the balance. And a lovely change of pace, again keeping the outline and just shortening the stride and keeping that happy picture. Now 2 small circles, and this is a big horse. You'd find these circles quite difficult, but again, same rhythm, same balance, and very accurate. The half pass to the left, correct bend. The horse's bend going with the half pass, straightening, and still keeping that lovely soft rhythm.
And a score of 34.2 for the Frenchman put him into second place. Now Mary King and Star Appeal. Mary last competed here 3 years ago on this horse when they were second. Star Appeal now 15 years old, but as always a very polished performance by Mary, Mike.
Always very focused, and I think that's something that perhaps comes from her early training with the great Sheila Wilcox. Very similar in that respect. And Mary, coming to this badminton, very, very determined. She was so disappointed with her performance in the Atlanta Olympics of 1996, and she wants to redeem herself in 2000 in Sydney. It's always been one of Mary's very strong phases. The counter-canter loops. The change of bend, but also keeping the canter rhythm. And now a chance to see the extended canter and the all-important transition down. A lot of horses have tried the flying change there, but of course this test without that flying change. Big horse, so those small circles aren't easy, but again, beautifully executed. A picture of total harmony and doing exactly what the test requires. The marks would be high.
Michaelmas and Heidi Antikasides were first-timers last year and acquitted themselves very well. Now a much more confident partnership, Mike.
Not only their badminton performance last year, but of course that was also reflected in her very good performance in the European Championships in Le Moulin. A great credit to the British trainer Brynley Powell for the way he's producing what is undoubtedly one of the emerging stars.
Leslie Law and Matt Butler, the 11-year-old Irish bred, they were 5th at Blenheim last year, and Leslie already had a good score under his belt with sheer H2O on 41.8. Could this horse do better?
Well, Leslie, another one with a point to prove. His best performance in 1996 when he was 4th in that very close finish in the year of the Atlanta Olympics, then missed his chance in those Olympics, and he would love to have 2 horses trying to catch the selector's eye with Sydney in mind. He's worked at his talents. He's probably now as good as he's ever been, and there's going to be no better place than badminton for Leslie to prove it.
But for the 1998 badminton champion, Chris Bartle, things were about to go horribly wrong with Word Perfect, Mike.
Dressage would not normally be this partnership's weak link, but Word Perfect has had a year off through a leg injury, and ever since Chris has brought him back to competition, he has found it very difficult to settle, and it was about to prove the case again.
So after 2 days of dressage, Darian Paz and Andrew Hoy had a useful lead on 30.8 from the Frenchman Rodolphe Scherer, with Leslie Law, the best-placed British rider, on Matt Butler in 3rd. Then came Greece's Heidi Antikasides and Michaelmas just behind on 36, with Mary King and Star Appeal in 5th. Cross-country day dawned to clear blue skies, rapidly rising temperatures, and the usual bumper-to-bumper traffic in the lanes around the lovely Badminton estate. But despite the glorious weather, the incessant rains in April meant that the course was still very soft in places, and the decision was taken late on Friday to omit 4 jumping efforts, as director Hugh Thomas explains.
We've decided that the going at 1 or 2 of the fences was just not good enough, all this terrible wet weather we've had. The course as a whole has dried extremely well and conditions look very, very good. But around 3 or 4 of the fences, it just isn't good enough to stand 92 horses, and we can't take any risks with that sort of thing. So made an inspection Friday afternoon to make doubly sure, and just felt that better safe than sorry.
The first new combination on the course is the pheasant feeders at 6 and 7. We asked Mary King to talk us through how she would approach this double of obstacles.
Right, here we have number 6 and 7 on this course. Quite early on, first technical fence that the horses and riders are going to come across. What makes it a little bit trickier is the horses will have had their first proper gallop on the course on the lead up to this fence. There's quite a long stretch from the last fence up to fence 6. So the horses are going to be bowling on up that long straight, and for the horses that are a bit fresh and a bit strong, it may be quite tricky to get them back, get them controlled enough to jump these 2 fences, which require great accuracy to make them ride well. Now my plan is to come around to link the 2 fences together, to jump the direct route, which is, my plan would be to come on a line, keeping the left, the white flag of fence 6 on my left, and have the red flag of fence 7 on my right, and really lining up those 2 flags so that there's a channel between the 2 and ride that straight line. So coming on this sort of line here, getting a good strong jump, positive jump over the first. It obviously means angling this first fence quite obliquely, but you know, the horses should at this level trust the riders to stay on the line, land over the first fence, maybe slightly use my left rein a little bit to encourage the horse to keep to the left as he lands, to then jump on over fence 7. Now there is an alternative if riders are unsure about linking the 2 fences together and jumping the first fence 6 at such an angle. You can separate the two fences, jump fence 6 near the red flag, so keeping straight to it, jumping by the red flag, landing and then turning back on yourself, going round on a big loop around to the right, coming around here and then getting on a straight line for fence 7, jumping by the white flag. That obviously is a very safe option but is extremely time consuming, and I feel the riders that are having to do this early on because they don't really trust their horses to stay on the line, they're going to come unstuck later on because there are many accuracy fences to come in the course. So in a way this is a good practice for later.
The omission of 2 jumping efforts at 12 and 13 simplified this new obstacle, as Ginny Elliott explains.
Well, this is a very different fence now compared to yesterday. We've still got the 2 steps down, which is obviously A and B, but now, having landed here, instead of 2 fences to jump, we've only got 1. Makes a very, very different story. Now, what are the riders going to do? Well, because the slow route is so much easier as well, they've only actually got 1 rail to jump instead of 2. My guess is most of the riders are going to come down these steps, turn right, turn left, 1 rail to jump, and that'll be that. So it's a very, very different fence now compared to yesterday. And I think most of the riders are feeling really quite relieved about it.
The lake complex is always the crowd's favourite and caused its usual fair share of problems last year. But the 2000 design looked a little more straightforward, but still far from easy. Chris Bartle now tells us how he is going to ride it.
We'll be halfway around the course now, and the horses will be coming into this big enclosure with a lot of spectators. We'll be coming from the Mitsubishi pickups and coming on a nice sweeping turn that'll bring us absolutely square onto this first element at fence 15. It's always a big jump into the lake, and you really have to be positive going in. And I'm going to have my reins adjusted a little bit long so that when I go in there, I'll be able to sit back but not lose control, because the line is absolutely critical in here, and we've got to make a turn through the water. We've got to keep the momentum through the water, a good rhythm to meet the out element. Out of the water, over this step, absolutely square on to the B element. Land here, and then there'll be 2 strides from here, which will bring you right up to the brush. And we've got to be really positive here because it's quite a wide fence. The horse has got to absolutely know that's where he's going to go and really motivate him to get over that fence there.
Badminton 2000 was also noteworthy for being Mark Todd's last attempt at winning the great event. Magic Rogue and Gary Parsonage were the first to go, but had a fall on the steeplechase and had to retire. And surprisingly, Mark Todd picked up 3.2 time penalties on the steeplechase. But let's just remind ourselves of the penalties that apply on the Saturday, namely 20 penalties a refusal or run out, 60 for a fall, and time penalties of 1 per second on roads and tracks, 0.8 on the steeplechase, and 0.4 for every second over the time allowed on the cross country. Another addition to the rules this year was the introduction of an extra 10-minute halt after the steeplechase. And was this generally well received by the riders, Mike?
With very mixed feelings. It has been brought in to ensure, whatever the weather, that phase C is a recovery phase after the steeplechase. Now, in some climates, it could be very useful, but it wasn't necessarily thought to be so at badminton. There is, of course, the 10-minute halt also before the start of the cross-country. And that is where the riders do have a time to gather their thoughts before the start of the big phase, the cross-country.
So with Magic Road's departure on the steeplechase, Leslie Law and Sheer H2O became the pathfinders on the cross-country course that many felt was a little bit more straightforward perhaps than last year, Mike.
That was certainly the riders' feelings, and with the background to the sport in the recent months before badminton, I think it was reflected as a very sensible move. Having said that, there was still plenty of the old favourites, big galloping fences, and I think perhaps the difference, not quite so many technical questions. Huntsman's Close, providing the really only test on the course from light into dark, and bright sunlight did make the approach to the gate quite dark. And the Ultra Caner comes early, big ditch. There's often a fence that's caught 1 or 2 out early on.
And now on to the new combination, the pheasant feeders. Quite an acute angle.
very acute angle requiring tremendous accuracy. And this man's show jumping background, that actually does normally see Leslie Lord his very best, and he showed it right there with sheer H2O.
Well, this horse won Bramham last year, having had 2 falls on that infamous cross-country day when the rains never stopped falling in '99, and this horse was one of those to just not be able to cope with the worsening conditions, but going well so far.
The famous corner of walls, test of accuracy again, and then down to the Shogun Hollow. Big logs, the old coffin question, and the horse looking full of confidence.
Just bypassing the hay rack, which was taken out to the Sydney Steps 2000. Just one element now at the bottom, not the 2. And as we'll see, makes it just that much easier. And Mike, if they'd have had the 2, they'd have been in that bog, wouldn't they?
Yes, they certainly would, and that's the reason for having it out. But now the lake, and this was perhaps the most significant softening of the course, a brush fence in, very forgiving, but then you've got to pick up the reins, and another accuracy question out, and the horse just questioning which way he had to go, but Leslie being very positive and saying, that's the way you've got to go, mate.
Well, perhaps the partnership that people came to see more than any other. Mark Todd in his final badminton on the inexperienced 10-year-old I Spy.
Another very small little horse, but Mark Todd knows all about that. The great charisma wasn't very big. And he's the horse that Mark has to pin his hopes for Sydney on now, because the lameness of Word for Word, keeping him out of Sydney Olympics, means that this horse is very important to him.
But perhaps Diamond Hall Red also in the locker to bring out later in the season for Mark Todd. Now, Leslie Law going the long way at the Pinion Bank, and a good reason for this, Mike.
Very good reason, because with Matt Butler here last year, he got into problems, and obviously Leslie has that in his back of his mind. Sensible bit of planning.
And going on now to the Shogun Sport turn, another new fence on the course. Big ditch, turn right, big bullfinch, well done. Leslie, beautifully ridden. And as he gallops onto Vicarage V, Mark Todd comes to the coffin.
Small he may be, this horse, but he's got a very, very good engine. So quick away from his fences.
So to the Vicarage V for Leslie, and he's going for the corner, as one would expect, and makes it look very easy. And now onto the Charisma Pond, and again a slightly different design this year, a round boathouse type design in the middle of the pond. One stride in the water, and very neatly over. And Mark Todd comes to the lake.
Mark always has a very good line through the water, and I think if you see it from above, you see that's over each boot flying, but a superb line, very smooth, making it easy for the horse to find the line out.
Leslie Law now coming to centre walk, the 2 big Aintree fences, and I actually think this is one combination that they do like to ride. And he made nothing of that as he gallops onto Tom Smith's walls. And here, 2 jumping efforts taken out as Mark Todd flies the Pinion Bank and onto the Shogun Sporting turn. And we'll see now Leslie Law at Tom Smith's walls. The first 2 elements taken out because the ground was too soft. Mr. Sight wiggle through there. And they now go on to Luckington Lane crossing.
This is the interesting part for Leslie Law and sheer H2O, to see whether he really does last home all of the 7,100 metres. At Burley last year, he made quite heavy weather of it, but there was probably a very good reason with the weather conditions.
As Chris Bartle and Oscar jump the corner of the Colt walls, Leslie Law at the gallant footbridge and beautifully over that, and galloping on to the beer garden as Katie Parker and Cornish Envoy jump the new pheasant feeders. And a model of consistency, this horse, Mike.
Model of consistency, and a horse with a lot of scope. Goes back to the great Cornish gold that her mother rode in the '72 Olympics.
Leslie now at the beer garden. And coming to these little upright tables and going the long way out over the wider table. Probably wisely. It's the direct route over the second upright little round picnic table, very exact. And really galloping for home and turning back into the park. And I'd say that Sheer H2O was, you know, at full throttle, wasn't he?
Yes, certainly on for the optimum time of 12:28. But here's a man who's cruising. Mark Todd, I spy. This horse is well up on the clock at this stage, and he could well really ponder over those 3.2 steeplechase time penalties. He was a little disappointed with his dressage test, but he's certainly making the best of his time. Oh, and that's very positive riding from Mark. Unusual you see him do that. And here's Leslie Law driving him home. He takes a check on his watch, and he's right on schedule. Good round, the horse has lasted home, and that's certainly good news for the British selectors with Sydney in mind. He stays on his overnight dressage score, and he's going to be the new leader at 41.8.
Mark Todd at the Beer Garden, coming the short way inside. Oh, my goodness me, he gave that a clout. But recovers as only Mark Todd can, and flies out over the table and galloped on to post the fastest, one of the fastest times of the day. He went well inside the time. Unfortunately, BBC cameras didn't see him finished, but I Spy put in a fantastic round for such a novice. And we see again here, Mike, my goodness me, he gave that a bit of a knock.
It doesn't look a big fence, but it certainly would seem to be jumping very big. But look how the horse recovered there, a superb leap. And then once again, Mark driving him forwards, asks him right off, and the little horse answers.
So as we see one great champion having his last badminton, so we see a first-timer, Caroline Pratt, and oh dear, Kinsey Control. Bit of a lack of communication, and now she's got to think differently now, hasn't she? Just got to think about getting home.
Time for cool heads, change of plan when necessary, and this is this young lady's first badminton, 2 rides, very big occasion for her.
Well, this man's been round here a few times. Andrew Nicholson, on his first ride, Whit Monday, had a stop at the Sporting Turn, so he just cruised home the rest of the way, just to get the horse round. Had a fair few time penalties, but he's got New York to come. As we pick up William Fox Pitt on Mark Todd's former ride, Stunning at the Vicarage V. Oh dear, and a rather wet end to his badminton on Stunning. But he's got Moonman to come, but just at the moment, he's not got an experienced horse in his yard, so you'll be really hoping that Moonman can show that he is a horse right up to the very top of the class. And as he has another go at the Vicarage V, so Matt Ryan sets out on the 16-year-old Khyber Sandstone.
Well, here's a man who is trying to get in the Australian team. Remember, a double Olympic champion from Barcelona. But the Australians have got a very competitive position for their team. They've got quite a lot to choose from, and Matt Ryan had quite a lot to prove.
Chris Bartle at the Beer Garden. He's already had a stop, so he's probably just thinking about getting home without any further mishap. Oh dear. Dumped on his back by Oscar.
And psychologically, a big disappointment for Chris Bartle. The horse that he won Actual Swang on, he was very much hoping he could have had 2 horses in the limelight with the Olympics in mind. Watch it again, doesn't have the stride he wants, catches a knee, just twists, and I'm afraid unseats Chris. Still word perfect to come, but that now will have to be pretty brilliant.
Tina Gifford on a new ride, the 11-year-old, the solicitor, at Huntsman's Close. Tina not running the gangster here at Badminton, which would probably be her first horse in the pecking order for Sydney. And the solicitor, still a bit of a novice.
Former rider of Sally Ascot. Oh, and that's showing exactly what a novice can do at badminton. Those holes and crowds can sometimes make them nervous, and there you saw it.
Now Matt Ryan coming to the lake where he got a very unceremonious ducking last year, so let's hope all's well this year.
Very strong cross-country seat, showed a very good effect there, and Khyber Sandstone really rocking and rolling.
Cornish Envoy and Katie Parker coming to the Beer Garden. This combination placed in Kentucky last year and competed as an individual in the Europeans, and going the straight way through the Beer Garden.
First one to do so, and Katie full of confidence. This well could be a combination to watch here. They've gone very well with just a quarter of a mile left to run.
Coming to the ha-ha. Fence 28. And I mean, he looks as if he's labouring a bit, but he's well up on the clock. Long striding horse by Welton Ambassador as Tina Gifford comes to the lake. My goodness, she's using every ounce of energy there.
A classic mistake coming out of water. Horse just missing his step. And poor Tina hitting the ground quite hard. That has knocked the wind out of her. And she still has the one ride on her favourite General Jock.
That to come. She did recover. Matt Ryan, and he said to me before this ride, he said he's given up trying to tell this horse how to do it properly. He's now just letting him doing it as he wants to, and he's going well, isn't he?
Sandy, very experienced. It would be his #1 chance, despite being 16 years old. He's got one or two younger horses with Sydney in mind, but this probably his best bet.
And for New Zealand, Paul O'Brien and NZ at the lake.
Class horse, trained in the Blythe Tate stable. 3 horses representing that stable at Badminton. And surprisingly, going for the longer route. But this is a real galloping machine. He'll probably make up this time. 3 horses now inside the time, so the time is gettable.
Graham Law and Shot in the Dark, Leslie's younger brother, at a dressage score of 53.2 and going well here at the Vicarage V.
32-year-old Graham has really come into the reckoning since his very good season last season. Went well with this horse and his later ride, Taxhaven, at Burley last year. A man with a string of horses that he really has built his confidence and experience, and he needs to make Badminton a good one to really stamp his name in the selectors' books.
Well, he had an excellent clear round with just a few time penalties, and now Tatham Spook, 15-year-old Irish bred. First attempt by rider Katie Pinnington.
One of the interesting facts for the new riders at Badminton is that they can see ways round, which gives them confidence, and so far the new riders have really looked confident, and that's very good news.
Now Jovial Sam at the Huntsman's Close with his new rider Joe Mayer of New Zealand. This horse always been a good cross-country horse.
Oh, and that doesn't do horse and riders' confidence any good. That's only fence 5. Joe Meyer will be wondering at some of the big fences to come later.
As we see Matt Ryan at the second last, the turn for home. First time we've seen this fence, a fence designed specifically to slow horses down, galloping across in front of the house. And with the 4 fences taken out, the revised time for the steeple, for the cross country, was 12 minutes 28. So Matt, he's not quite going to make it, Mike.
No, but the horse has still done a good job.
In fact, he was so exuberant going in through the first part of the turn for home that I think he had to go the longer way. He just jumped too big over it. But he'll just want to get home safe. And 0.4 penalties for every second over the time. You can see the score clicking up in the top left-hand corner of your screen. But an excellent round by Matt Ryan puts him into 3rd place after the cross-country. NZ at the Tom Smith's Walls, very neatly through there.
Not sure that too many are going to jump the corner. That route that Paul O'Brien took, much less risky.
But most of them taking the direct route here across Lackington Lane.
Yes, because the alternative route is so difficult. And that's exactly why I think virtually every rider will take it. Well, here's a first-time rider for Germany now, 23-year-old Marie-Jeanette Steinler with Track Levant. Broke her arm quite badly last year, but is mended now. Germany rate this young star very highly. Oh, and another hesitation and crumple on landing. That is a big disappointment. Let's hope she's not hurt her arm. Still a little bit sore.
So the overnight leader from the Thursday, Tristram Hours and Hatherton's River Dance. I should think a very nervous Tristram, Mike.
Very much so. But incidentally, Marie-Jeanette Steinler, she did retire, but her arm not injured.
And as Tristram sets out, so we pick up Laura Jennings, another first-timer, on the 14-year-old Irish-bred thoroughbred time watch. And what a shame she'd been going really well into there, and it was just a little bit of lack of concentration, wasn't it?
Lack of concentration and not quite decisive enough when it really mattered. But here's a man in his first badminton who is being decisive. 21 years old, not overawed by the occasion at all, and being very, very positive. So here's Laura Jennings coming home. Those 20 jumping penalties, otherwise clear. Her sister Lucy Jennings, now Lucy Henson, rode for Great Britain, and Laura will have thoroughly enjoyed her first ride around the cross-country. 12th place at the moment.
51-year-old Eddie Stibbe, a real old faithful in three-day eventing circles, and the riders' representative now on the FEI committee as Tristram comes to the lake.
Makes it well.
Big horse, 17 hands.
Over the brush going into water.
Oh, and did he present? I have a feeling he didn't. I have a feeling he was trying very hard to turn left, and if that's what the judges think, he'll get away with it.
Well, we're going to see it now in slow motion. The question is, did he present the horse to the fence? If he did, he gets 20 penalties. And Mike, no, he didn't. He was pulling on left rein, wasn't he?
Definitely. It was the rider who changed his mind, not the horse, and that is the ruling, so he should get a clean sheet there. Well, now Steph Thompson, just Tallulah, her first ride, a young lady who's come through the juniors and young riders very successfully.
As New Zealand's Andrew Benny comes to the Lake Complex. Andrew had his first ride here in 1985, now riding the 11-year-old Waterbert.
Andrew, who first came over after the Los Angeles Olympics of 1984. He lives very close to badminton, very experienced.
And the lake riding extremely well. Oh, I say, Hatherton's River Dance gave the big log at the top of Pinnan's Bank a good old rub.
Well, a really good hunting seat there, and that's exactly what this young man has done. He's had plenty of hunting. And Nigel Table would have told him all about stickability, and he is really going very well. Pretty well unknown before he came, but he's certainly going to be known after this competition.
And an experienced combination, the 14-year-old Ballyfree and 38-year-old Jancis Tulloch. Missed last year as they gallop on through the soft part of the ground there after the Sydney Steps.
Eddie Stibbe ridden in more three-day events than any other man riding these days. 51 years old, but he's not the oldest man here. A man from Switzerland is the oldest man riding, Max Eichenberger.
Hatherton's River Dance at the Beer Garden, going the longer way. Yes, a very long striding horse, probably a sensible decision, Mike.
Very impressed the way Tristram has really attacked his first badminton, because he's made some sensible decisions, and he's not only going to get home clear, but pretty fast and pretty impressive for your first time.
Yeah, just watching there, I mean, he really had to pull hard on the left rein to get it round. It's not as the most nimblest of horses, as we see number 40. This is Ginger, 11-year-old grey mare, ridden by Andrus Trybowski.
Well, Tristram Hours just coming down to this turn for home fence. Normally, of course, in the past, this has been a long galloping stretch, but this is Hugh Thomas's idea of just slowing the course down, done with the technical delegate, Wolfgang Feld, and it really does look to have worked.
But he's already well over the time. It just shows he's a big, long striding horse, perhaps doesn't cover the ground quite as quick as he looks.
But he has taken quite a lot of the longer alternatives, and for your first badminton, it's a very, very good effort indeed. This is exactly the sort of material that will bode good for Britain's future in the sport.
Well, Tristram, interviewed afterwards, was absolutely speechless. He was over the moon, and rightly so. A great effort for first time. Puts him into 10th place. as Ballyfree and Jancis Tulloch come to the Luckington Lane crossing.
Well, this is a horse that looked very impressive at Burley in 1998, but then took a year off, and in fact Jancis and Andrew had their first child while Ballyfree was off. As we now see just Tallulah, Stephanie Thompson. One of the interesting aspects of these first-timers that they have walked the course and they have sensibly used their heads where they think there's a wall. It was just a nasty moment, but they've sensibly used their heads and planned the route according to their own and their horse's capabilities, and that's exactly what you've got to do. Stephanie, for many years, was trained by the brilliant Jill Watson, but now has her own yard.
Ballyfree coming to the beer garden. And they seem to have split about equal, those that have gone round the tree and come inside it. But she looks like she's going the direct route.
Former Jancis Lane, always very positive across country, and you're certainly seeing it again this afternoon.
We haven't seen that ridden better. Former show jumper Carol Dennis on Beckett the second, 11-year-old thoroughbred. Through Huntsman's Close.
Dennis, a very well-known name up in Yorkshire, both in the show jumping world and the eventing world, and Carol's done well with this horse, particularly at one-day events in the last year or so.
Dusky Sky coming to the Vicarage V with Panda Wilson, horse formerly ridden by Sam Lyle. And just asked one question too many there. And that always does catch out a few. The corner of the Vicarage V. Into a great big horse, Johnny Appleseed from New Zealand. This horse won Puinui in 1996. Virginia Loisel, now based in Belgium, and her first time at Badminton.
She actually started here last year but withdrew on the roads and tracks. Came over to Britain to try and further her team chances, but of course New Zealand got a lot of choices. But here's a choice that could well come on the British selectors menu. Good round by Jancis Tulloch, clear, fast. She's going to have a few time penalties, but certainly has caught the eye with an impressive round across country, 7th at the moment.
As Beckett, the second, comes to the pin in bank, going the long way. Oh, and that's 2 refusals.
Yes, it is, and I think this reflecting what we always used to say in early badmintons, that a horse begins to lose his confidence at badminton and you begin to see him losing enthusiasm, and that's exactly what Beckett is doing for Carol at the moment. She's going to be quite pushed to get home now.
Sasha Pemble at the Pheasant Feeders on a young horse, 9-year-old Dazzling Effects.
Sasha, a very good example of her second attempt at badminton, coming on a new horse. She came here 2 years ago with what was her young rider horse. They performed well, but now she's come on a first time that certainly puts in a very big jump there. And she's a young lady who has ambition in the sport. Her father and mother bred this horse. Well, this is Shoestring the third, Catherine James from Northumberland. She's brought this horse right through all the levels. You come up through the levels to compete at this great event, and that is a tremendous achievement to get a horse here, having done all the hard work. Arlen now, woof, woof, and really showing a lack of accuracy there, and I'm afraid paying the penalty. For Ireland, sweet icon Sarah Daly.
Sasha Pemble now at the pin and bank. Big scopy horse, isn't it, Mike?
Just what you like to see, a horse that really has got a lot of jump and makes it look easy, got some in reserve, and you always like that. Oh, just jumped a little too big over the ditch, and in fact, Sasha was just a little bit behind the movement, not with the horse, and that's the sort of instant decision that can go wrong for you.
But it was their only mistake in their round.
Well, here's Alice Plunkett now, Badminton Canter. Alice, well known in the racing world, works for the Racing Channel.
As we see Tim Randall on Thomas the Terrorist, 12-year-old thoroughbred through Huntsman's Close. Experienced rider, even though he's only 30 years old, Tim.
Had a very good horse called Legs 11, which got him all his experience. And this is a horse that's always looked potential. Tim will hope so this year. Well, here's Badminton Canter, French-bred horse. Alice very sensibly bought this horse, very experienced, to get her some competition at the big three-day events. Didn't go well at Burley, but looks to be making amends here.
Yes, they're really finding that late riding well for them as Tim comes to, oh dear, the Shogun Hollow, and Thomas the Terrorist did not like that. So now he's got to just think about getting this horse round. Mike, how difficult is it to keep going after you've had a mistake like that?
Well, you really have got to grit your teeth, and Tim has got his own style, but they're a little bit behind the movement, and that doesn't give the horse confidence. As we go back to Alice Plunkett, she's ridden round Aintree, the 7th in the Fox Hunters, the famous Fox Hunters race at Aintree.
And for France, Christophe Goulemet, Cassoa de Touche. Oof. Well now, Mike, he did not get 20 penalties for that.
Yes, and the reason is because he changed his mind in the judges' minds, not the horse. And so he gets away with it, perhaps a little lucky.
As he gallops on, so we see from Australia, Master Monarch, Brooke Staples, beautifully over the corner at Colt Walls. And our Frenchman is still trying, but there he did get 20 penalties, didn't he?
Very definitely, just ducks past the red flag. Just what that fence is all about. But here's a man who's never been to badminton before, but a combination that is highly regarded and could easily be tipped for inclusion at Sydney. Just a Monarch horse, and at halfway, he looks impressive.
Just 9 years old, Master Monarch, but belying his years, as we see Italy's Giovanni Menchi at Tom Smith's Walls.
Another international rider based in this country, based with Tina Gifford on a former Kurt Hendricks horse, and incidentally an Australian-bred horse. As here's another Australian rider, and that was impressive. Really jumped that easily. I must say this is a horse and rider that are really coping with this course as easily as any we've seen. Rider enjoying it, the horse's ears pricked. Again, easy peasy.
And from one 9-year-old horse to another. First timer for the Honourable Bob and his experienced pilot, Karen Dixon, back at Badminton after the birth of her first child.
And another one riding a second string horse, Too Smart, being saved with September in mind. New policy for the selectors. It'll be very interesting to see whether it pays off. Well, this is a horse that must be jumping into the Australian selectors' books. It's been so impressive. 49.6 dressage, so he could come into the reckoning.
And can he get inside the time as he gallops on down this long galloping section to the Gallant Bridge?
Brooke Staples has had a lot of experience over here. That's one of the great advantages of competing in Great Britain. You can compete on a regular basis, and that improves your technique. And it certainly has improved this man's technique, and it's showing.
Karen Dixon now coming to the lake. My goodness, that horse did put in a leap there. He's a very forward-going fella. She's just got to steady him. Beautifully done. Rushes through the out fence, and we just see this horse now gallop down here, Mike. Really covers the ground, and he's coming to the stickiest part of the course where the ground gets very soft. But my goodness, he's got a nice way of going, hasn't he?
Well, there you see that sticky going. Karen will be easing him through that. But this is Karen Dixon at her very best in forceful form. That's exactly how you like to see her. 3 Olympics behind her, remember.
The only representative from Canada, Wyndham St. John, and the 11-year-old thoroughbred, Oliver going the long route at the pheasant feeders, and she's obviously set her stall out just to get round, Mike.
Yes, you'd probably lose 10 or 11 seconds there. Canada without a qualification for a team, but they have got possible places for individuals to qualify for Sydney. And that's why Wyndham would be here at Badminton. Horse come off the race course, good-looking horse.
And puts in a decent leap out over the log out of the quarry.
Well, here's Foxground Dusky Song coming down to the turn for home. This is where control and balance of a tired horse is part of the skills. And although Amanda is doing a job, it's not that tidy. Reins too long, and I'm afraid pays the penalty, loses her way, and gets 20 penalties for that. Just a little lack of experience, lack of technique. And in this modern sport, you have to have it if you're going to get to the top of the tree. But here's a lady with all the experience. The horse, very, very scopy. Karen having quite a job to ride out his big jump. Very strong and still full of gallop.
To a young lady, 21-year-old Louisa Lockwood. She was placed at Punchestown last year, first timer on the 11-year-old, fair impression.
Well, she is the youngest by 1 month younger than Tristram Ayres. And rather as Tristram has done, is making an impressive debut so far.
Now, Karen Dixon at the Beer Garden going the long way. This horse very, very long striding, and I think she probably just decided that discretion was the better part of valor there. Oof, dear.
Still quite inexperienced, and a horse who likes to get on with it. He doesn't like to be held up as Karen did there, as you could see.
Will he be free at the sport turn?
Wiggy Foxpit and of course her husband riding as well, and they haven't had a good start. William who failed to complete on Stunning, and now I'm afraid Wiggy with Will He Be Free parting company. Midnight Dazzler with Darryl Scaife, probably the best looking horse in the field, lovely looking horse and so capable. This is really one for the future.
As Louisa Lockwood comes to the sporting turn and makes nothing of it. And she's flying, Mike.
She certainly is. But here's Erica Watson, very consistent record here, although he's never finished better than 18th. And he always gets round, riding for Shirley Clifford Thorpe, herself a very successful competitor here in the past. 47.4 off the dressage, and looks to be making good on that so far.
Well, the man at the head of the dressage leaderboard is Andrew Hoy and the mighty Darian Paz, as they set out to try and consolidate their position. Tim Else making a good recovery at the Luckington Lane crossing, knocked into the red flag, but didn't go the wrong side of it, so didn't incur penalties. Louisa Lockwood.
Well, judgment very important. It's a very fine line between overcooking it and getting it right, and she is very, very fast, and maybe a little too fast in the modern sport, but a determined and very impressive ride.
Andrew Hoy, Darian Paz at the quarry, and Andrew really up for this. I spoke to him the day before the cross country, and he really, really wants this title. Darian Paz, just poetry itself across country.
Louisa Lockwood turning to the last, and she is fast.
But Mike, the horse is coming home easily within himself. You know, he's
a check on the watch, but I don't think there's any need to be that to time. 20, just under 20 seconds under the time, using more than the horse is necessary. But despite all that, it is a very good performance by Louisa Lockwood in her first badminton.
Darian Paz, such a long stride, just 3 through there, and a little bit short there because he's so long striding. He got a bit close there, but so agile as he gets himself out of the lake. Now Nicola Tweddle and Mr. Bumble, big jump out of the steps to Sydney 2000 and onto the lake.
Well, Andrew, particularly with Bettina's help, very professional in their preparation. But interestingly enough, Bettina went to a wedding in Germany yesterday, but flown back overnight to help Andrew today. Having such a good ride. Oh, and is it too good a ride? Was he just sat a little passive? Isn't it easy to criticise? But it's 20 penalties, and that is a dream gone for Andrew. Be very interesting to see it again, because the horse does everything right, jumps perhaps a shade big, and did Andrew just not hold him together? I wonder.
Nicola Tweddle and Mr. Bumble coming to the lake, and we asked her for her thoughts about the lake this year, following her ducking in 1999.
Well, it is different, but as I left, a parcel came in the post, and there was a good look card and a snorkel, so I presume I'm ready for it now.
Nicola absolutely flying into the lake.